I made a reply yesterday, but there was no sound, so I'll try again in a more robust way. Yeah, I mean, first of all, right out of the, gate, you're correct. We shouldn't diagnose as a general rule of thumb. But I think you're intelligent enough to follow what I think is a more detailed breakdown and where the exceptions are, why the exceptions prove the rule, and so on. I mean, I have a theory I've shared before that, all of this internet debate, all of this public dialogue comes down to psychology, because we're psychological creatures, and we have psychological reasons ultimately for the systems that we hold, including logical, rational ones. We shouldn't rush to that, because those are also distractions. I mean, somebody could believe something for an emotional attachment reason, like it reminds them of their mother. It could still be a good thing, it could still be being a doctor. That's why they're a doctor. But it still is true that ultimately these things come down to the psychology. Now, when you get to that point online with someone you disagree with, which again is inevitable if you discuss things long enough, you have a choice of either ending the conversation or talking about psychology. The complication and where the rule of don't diagnose really comes from in this, framework where it's expressed is the fact that generally, if you're talking to somebody and you're getting to this point where suddenly it seems like the explanation for how the person thinks is not the reasons they've given, but it's more than 51% some psychological reason. So the psychological component is bigger than all the other reasons put together. Then you start to get to the point of, well, do I just stop taking part in this conversation, or do I go ahead and diagnose? And it depends a little bit on the subject and other factors that I'll get into as I bring this back around to Osinion. Yeah, for anybody wanting context, obviously look in the description box and watch Coffin's video. So anyway, it comes down to some criteria whereby we decide, is the polite social thing, you don't go further, or is this a debate, or is it really, something that has to be pressed and it's going to have to become psychological. Now the problem is that, I distracted myself. So the problem is that we actually tend to start diagnosing, not me personally, but we, when our reason for making a reply is over 51% emotional. It's not because there's nothing more to get there. When Thunderfoot diagnosed you, it wasn't like he had exhausted every single point you'd made, and now he's like, there's no explanation, but, Thunderfoot was more than 51% psychologically motivated. So he said, this is psychological, I'm going to go psychological. And he wasn't wrong in the sense that he proved that he was the one going psychological. So to me, where I don't worry about what the idiots are going to think, I worry about what I'm going to think. When I watch an exchange like that, that was revealing. You're immune to that. You've been open. Yes, of course, because you're one of the guys out there admitting that this stuff does relate to psychology. It can be separated and it can ultimately be related, and so on and so forth. But even if you hadn't already expressed that kind of thing, I mean, it becomes clear in that kind of an exchange. I didn't listen to the video talking about Osinion much. I heard it through your vid, I guess, a little, and I think I watched a little bit of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, so I'm not defending or commenting on that particular statement. Though my general impression is it's somebody in a more or less calm demeanor going through, what was it? Hyperactive. No, what is that? Not hyperactive. What is the histrionic personality disorder? Right. So, there's a lot of cases where people jump the gun on this sort of thing, absolutely, and it makes them look stupid. And, you could make a video of don't psychoanalyze people unless you're ready to reveal your own psychoanalytic issues. Right? So there's a general rule there. But let's get back to Osinion. it's psychological, these things. You can't discuss what's going on with Osinion, with him or anybody else on an intellectual basis. You can't discuss, well, should you put someone in a ambulance? They're not talking about that. We don't want to be prodded. It's not really about if they want to be prodded. It's about they're faking and they want to be dramatic, and you don't call the cops when you're faking, you know? This whole thing with this other girl that he then dragged through the mud again after, oh, I don't want to get her online. You shouldn't talk bad about someone you love. And then he does this every time. He wants to have her throw away her life and move to where he is. He's got money. He's a celebrity. He's this some guy person shown when he was young. He had all this idea for religion. It looks pretty religious. The way he runs things. That he expects people to turn their life around, that he talks about, you should have just nothing but love and compassion, and he's not that way. And so we can decide to say nothing, which is what I've generally decided about him. Or you can decide to say something. Now, he's got a group of people out there you would call haters, but they're a group of people around the age, a little older, a lot of them, not all of them, that could comprise his fan base. And they're smart, and they have a stone on which to grind their axe against phenomena like Osinion. So they can either have their free speech to comment on this noxious phenomena, or they could shut the hell up. But there's no way for them to keep speaking and not mention psychology at this point. There really is nowhere else to go discussing things with Osinion. There is no point in making a logical argument pro-con, or even a healthy emotional argument pro-con about vegetarianism with Osinion. This is a psychological phenomenon involving celebrity worship. You have somebody fucking their own life up, will go up online and give advice like, since he's a celebrity, that makes you like a demigod in our culture, so it doesn't matter how much your life is fucked up, you can go right on there and give sincere advice about things that relate directly to the stuff you're fucking up. Psychological. So, I think, what are we trying to do? Are we really going to intellectually solve each other's screwed up intellectual systems? Have you ever seen that happen? Have you seen the facts? No, it's emotional. The way you get people out of a fucked up system that they're presenting with the pseudo intellectual nature they think is intellectual is you use the intellectual tools to dig down to the bottom of that, to the emotional core. If you don't dig into that, they don't change anyway. Now, I don't try to change other people, but I do go down there, and we will have emotional information that you can use to change yourself or not. But it's not off limits, per se. It's just that most people, when they think they're going into the psychological domain, are, but it's not the other person's, it's their own. But if you're very cautious and slow, then, or the other person is especially incautious, you certainly can reach these points where there's nothing to talk about psychology. So, yeah, it's a bit more complicated. We need some better understanding so that people don't think, oh, yes, we should talk about psychoanalysis right away. Look, a lot of trolls do that, and it's just pointless because that's starting at the end of a conversation. But don't forget, it is the end of every conversation.